Welcome back to the Red Path. Today, we're going to do a list analysis of patron Aaron Reseck's World Eaters list. And this is going to be a fun one. And we're back. It's been a pretty grueling few weeks here in the Brass Citadel, and I know the normal content, tactical stuff, lore snippets, etc. has been on the back burner, but that Tabletop Simulator event took a surprising amount of behind the scenes work. But it's over and done with now. So I am going to be looking at doing some TTS stuff coming up. If you are interested, be sure to let me know in the Discord. Top tier patrons get first dibs on any live stream gaming, and they have an open invite there, but as I get a little more free time, I want to get hopefully at least one TTS game in a week going forward, and would love to have a game with you all. So this video is looking at an absolute beast of a list submitted by a member of the Eightfold, Aaron, and he told me he plays for fun and would like my thoughts on the list. It's a whopping 2,998 point list, and it would look like an absolute monster on the tabletop. Aaron is working on getting the list put together, so he doesn't have pictures at the moment, so I'll use some stock images on the screen for visual references. Okay, the army is named the Bloodhounds, and allow me to set the scene a little. The aftermath of a battle is always the same. Blood and smoke, the dead and the dying. There are no winners in a field of corpses, except perhaps one. The one who speaks to her now. Sister Sandraudiga shakes her head, clearing the red from her vision. Before her, slain, so many slain. Traitorous Spartans clad in blood-red armour. Her sister's ebony smeared in gore, and some sort of morbid effigy to the slain berserkers. It is then that she notices these dead sisters were slain facing her, with wounds inflicted by a weapon that matches that hanging loosely in her grasp. She looks down. A broken chain axe is in her hands. She had not felt the weight of it until then, but it is as though it had adopted its own gravity in that moment. Not just the weight of the steel and adamantium, but of the dozens of her sisters who she now realised were her victims. The sound of bones snapping stirs her from her mournful introspection. She turns, and behind her stands a handful of power-armoured traitors, world eaters. She raises the axe and is met with laughter from the pit leading. We have no quarrel, nor do I, sister. The broken meat of his face hides a cunning that yet radiant like the iron tan with blood in the air. The blood god speaks to me now. I know he speaks to you. There is no choice now. No parlay, no truth. Karanath has decided. You are to be my executioner. It is done. The berserker spits blood onto the corpse at his feet, glances at Sandraudiga briefly, nods, and finally places his solemn cutting realm over his bloody bed. He raises his great axe to her and turns, leaving his coating of berserkers and mutants to a waiting stormy wall. Sandraudiga wants to resist, the spark inside her, her love for the Emperor, for her sisters, for the saints. It is like a raging serpent coiling inside her, fighting against this new power, but deeper, much deeper than the conditioning and the devotion. There is something older, darker, and much hungrier than the corpse god. A living, vital, furious power that promises what she truly desires. Blood and skulls. Aaron's warband contains numerous aspects of attack, and the full list will be scrolling on the screen right now. We can see he is dedicating a lot of points to the glory of character combat. A Gorefather Jump Lord, a Demon Prince with wings, a Red Butcher Terminator Lord, a Master of Executions, supported by a Dark Apostle. This cohort of characters offers a really nice range of assaults. The Demon Prince and Jump Lord can move up quickly, supporting the initial combat units and attempt to engage with enemy scouts and front lines, making short work of anything that they come in contact with, whilst the Terminator and Master of Executions move up from round 2 slaughtering their own way through enemy skulls. Supporting the HQ units are 4 squads of 8 berserkers. How could this be improved? Well, sure, you could have 8 squads of 8, that's the dream, isn't it? But honestly, maintaining that balance between narrative and field competence is delicate, and I think 4x8 in a 3000 point game is pretty darn solid. In turn, the berserkers are further supported by a nasty little blob of possessed, themselves running with a couple of greater possessed who feel that nice role between cheap supporting element and excellent buff for demon units, such as this possessed bomb. Also, a cheeky little squad of dual lightning claw terminators to drop in round 2 or 3 and absolutely ruin someone's day. Is there anything more cornate than that? We then have a squad of 7 raptors, a squad of 5 with melter, and 2 chaos spawn, filling the fast attack slots. We all know that raptors are absolutely solid for world eaters, but not broken so that they don't fit in a friendly game. They're not going to leave any feel bad moments, but they can help secure some early points, and the spawn are vital to help screen the backfield or act as a little distraction here and there. Then we get into the heavy stuff, and I like this a lot. 5 las cannon havocs and 3 obliterators. I think the las cannons are absolutely great in this list. Competitively, maybe not so much as I've discussed elsewhere, but they're also a good choice for your friendlier games. They're swingy, so you do run the risk of being disappointed, but when they pay off with the big 6s for damage, it feels worth it. But it's the obliterators I'm here for, and I genuinely believe they can have some decent play. The fact that the greater possessed will help them in combat is a nice little buff too. We also have 2 Mauler Fiends running alongside the host, likely acting as a great distraction to absorb firepower early on, and buying time for the first wave of HQs to get into charge range. Finally, there are 2 Terex pattern termites to act as transports for some of the berserkers. Alright, let's have a look and see how I think this army will play, and then any thoughts on tweaking it up a little. The army is certainly built around the idea of having multiple waves of assaulting units. As I visualise this force being deployed, I imagine the following. The Jump Lord, Demon Prince and Raptors provide the initial strike team, Apoplectic Frenzy on the Lord and Raptors, with the Prince flying slightly behind them, perhaps as an intermediary between them and the second wave. Following these units, the Possessed and Mauler Fiends rumble down the centre of the battlefield, absorbing firepower and staking a claim on any central strategic locations. The Possessed able to fully utilise cover and terrain, whilst the Mauler Fiends offering a tempting target that will absorb a reasonable amount of firepower. Whilst these threats advance up the table, it's all more or less a ruse to allow for positioning of the real threats in the list. The termites will be ready to surface, the obliterators and terminators will have their teleportation coordinates locked, the havocs will have found a suitable vantage point, and upon command of whichever HQ is still coherent, absolute carnage will be unleashed. As this firestorm is being weathered, 2 more squads of berserkers will have been traipsing across the landscape, perhaps capturing objectives or moving stealthily through the terrain, whilst the Red Butcher Lord, Apostle, Master of Executions, Greater Possessed and Spawn have positioned themselves to support their allies with buffs and slaughter, or to absorb firepower in their stead. The joy of an army this size, clocking in at just under 3000 points, is the wealth of CP to spend on buffs. Even with 2 CP on Red Butchers and at least 3 more on Apoplectic Frenzy, 11 CP still remains to power up at least 1 unit each round for most of the game. The breadth of reroll auras from the Lords and Prince and potential assistance from the Apostle means hopefully little reason for CP rerolls. As I've mentioned, with this being a fluffy list, I don't want to change too much because it's based on models that Aaron likes the look and lore about. So before I do offer suggestions, let's examine that lore a little bit more, shall we?
Your heresy cannot be forgiven, sister. Those who fall from the Emperor's grace must be destroyed and denounced, their names forever struck from the memory of the Imperium.
I am loyal to those who deserve loyalty. I slave for those who honor the slain, but today your skull is not to be mine.
Sandraudica stepped back from the Templar, lowering her axe to a guard. She gestured with a nod behind the loyalist marine. Brother Antrivus turned slightly, not allowing the fallen sister to escape the purview of his auto-senses, but registering a new threat advancing toward him.
It matters not in which order that you die, only that you do die. Come then, arch-heretic, face the judgment of the Emperor, and then I shall bring justice to the shattered remnants of your mongrel warband.
Kartikaya strode toward the final Templar, his oversized axe held easily in one hand, his red armor shattered and broken, his face mangled. Almost the full left side of his skull was missing, the brain matter open to the elements. But still he was a force of nature, an undeniable presence, a warrior whose savagery was only surpassed by his victory.
887 skulls lay behind me, sycophant. Only one remains to claim.
Antrobus gestured to the bodies around him. Dozens of traitor marines lay disemboweled and decapitated. Hundreds of mutants and mortals beyond them were dead. The Astartes had written an honourable account for himself that day too.
You will not claim this skull, traitor. I bring only death.
Kartikaya was not a patient warrior. The nails screamed permanently in his brain meat, constantly demanding bloodshed and slaughter. Only with Herculean effort did he resist them in his efforts to reunite the 12. But the pathetic slurs of the loyalist were all the excuse he needed. He leapt toward the Templar, his axe blurring in a strike meant to bisect the marine in one stroke. Only through the artifice of his blade did Antrobus survive the first cut, his power sword barely parrying the great axe. Antrobus was a veteran of 200 years. He had slain creatures of the Great Devourer. 100 heretic Astartes had fallen to his blade. The count of fallen greenskins by his hand was too great to number. By all accounts, Brother Antrobus, chosen sword of the Black Templars, was a venerable and noted warrior. He did not parry the second strike. He did not even register its velocity. His own blade was still reverberating from defending the initial strike as it dropped from his grip, impaling the bloodied dirt before him as his head gently slipped from his shoulders.
888!
Kartikaya smiled as he peeled the Mark X helm from the head inside. The sky above the warlord thickened, a veil of bloody mist descending and surrounding him. An ethereal crimson gloom bathed the warrior as the blood god smiled, and Kartikaya's ascension began. So, how would I run this force on the tabletop? Well, I've already covered the basics of how I would split my assaults, waves of combat striking the enemy over and over. Whilst I don't want to change anything significantly, I will offer some tips on some minor changes that may improve the effectiveness. Let's start with the Warlord trait and relic. Aaron has chosen Flames of Spite on his Demon Prince, but I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Flames generates mortal wounds on 6s to wound, but as a prince, he cannot benefit from Veterans of the Long War, so he's generally stuck with that 17% chance. And whilst he'll generally have 7 attacks, likely hitting with 5 or 6 after rerolls, he's likely only generating a single mortal wound. Alternatives to this, to create a bit more damage, would be Disciple of Khorne, which I think would fit in nicely with the Prince's Ascension, which would allow him to recoup some of the misses created by the axe, it is -1 to hit, and make him an absolute beast against any character or model with 5 wounds or more. Other than that, I think Violent Urgency could also help improve the mobility of the first 2 waves of attackers, especially with the Prince being fairly mobile with wings. If coupled with the Talisman of Burning Blood, he becomes very threatening early on, able to dish out huge damage and support those others assaulting beside him. I'd generally grant him a Warp Bolter as well. The points are available and it's a nice little gun to plink a few wounds or fell a couple of marines where necessary. I'm unsure how Aaron wants to run Benediction on the Apostle, but I think it might be better to change to Illusory Supplication and have the 5++ bubble, which will help protect the more vulnerable foot berserkers as they push forward, likely saving a few models with the abundance of AP shredding firepower out there. However, if the -1 is intended for the Prince, for example, it may prove important. As mentioned, I would definitely consider frenzying both squads of Raptors and the Jump Lord pre-game, allowing all 3 to push forward and stake a claim early on. Due to how frenzy works, if Aaron did not gain first turn, he can position those units to still be forward but protected within or behind terrain, and still gain a few inches for his eventual movement. I would also consider frenzying the obliterators. Whilst they are slow, on most mission types, 9 inches pre-game and then 5 to 10 inches with an advance, their guns are assault, remember, and rerolls are available from several sources. They could position very strongly very early on, and if the dice are favourable, could act to weaken assets for an early charge from the Demon Prince and others. As infantry, they can benefit from vets too. In addition, if frenzied and positioned safely, once the enemy comes out to play, they can absolutely take care of themselves in combat too, and that should never be forgotten by a World Eaters player. Like I said, one of the great things about larger battles is the abundance of CP available, and I think it's important to consider beforehand where those CP sinks are likely to go. 2 for Red Butchers and 3 or 4 for Apoplectic Frenzy, and an additional 2 for the patrol. It still leaves a solid 10 to start, and 11 after the first command phase. You can safely utilise vets twice in the first turn, shooting and combat phases, and potentially upgrade combat further with other strats improving AP or fighting again. Given the amount of characters, it's always worth remembering Skulls for the Skull Throne to regenerate some CP where possible too. I think this list would be absolutely beautiful and devastating on the table. It's absolutely 100% World Eaters. Everything wants to get close and butcher. It's got a lot of damage output, some really tight synergies between the Demon Mark units and overlapping auras to support waves of oncoming assault. The heavier options like the Mauler Fiends will likely die, but absorb the firepower necessary to get the killier HQs into range. And once those squads of 8 Berserkers reach the enemy lines, well, it may be too late for the opponent then. I hope one day that GW can become more affordable down under, because I'd love to see pictures or video of Aaron commanding this force to great and bloody victory. It would just look absolutely glorious. And that's why we love this game, right? But for now, Aaron has some more important things to focus on. He recently got engaged to his fiancée, Tandy, so I'd like you to send them some congratulations in the comments below and wish them the best in their life together. Okay folks, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed my take on a fluffy list. If you'd like to have me do a video analysing your warband, it's a perk available to Chosen of Khorne tier patrons. I don't put ads in my vids, so I rely on folks to support the channel through Patreon and other things. I don't paywall content, but I do try and offer some good bonuses to supporters. This list analysis video, opportunities to game, when there is a game and a platform we share at least, early releases on most content, and a few other things. But if you're not in a position to support financially, or it's not your thing, and I totally get it, you can also support by liking, commenting, and even sharing these videos. Every little bit helps, and the more the channel grows, the better. We need to spread the carnage everywhere. Okay, so yeah, if you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. If you didn't, well, hit the thumbs down and let me know in the comments. And as ever, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main burn.